Christy with the Chirp YouTube channel. Welcome to this video. I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm here to talk to you today in regards to an email that I received from a mom of a child who has an autism spectrum disorder. Her concerns about her child were related to the fact that her child is delayed, and it really feels to her as if her child will always be delayed and her child will never be able to learn on her own. And I want to say that yes, it is possible that a child may be delayed and may not ever catch up to typically developing peers. That is a fact that we might have to look at. It does not change how we should interact with our child, though. It does not change that every single skill we teach adds to the independence and the life satisfaction that that child is going to experience. We can't stop teaching, we can't stop helping our child just because we think that it might not make our child typical. What I want to say is that especially in early childhood, we need to teach individual skills very purposefully. And it feels like a never-ending journey of continually teaching very small little skills like requesting. Initially, we have to teach requesting word by word. I want banana, please, with visuals. Initially, we have to teach purposefully how to go through the sequence of using the bathroom and then washing our hands. We have to show them pictures of pants down, sit down, pee, wipe, pants up, lid down, flush. I always say lid down because it's so gross to flush the toilet when it's not closed. Those bacteria go everywhere, all over your toothbrush, all over your mirror, all over your face. It's disgusting. So please close the lid and teach your kids to do the same thing. Back to the topic at hand. We have to teach these skills very purposefully and very repetitively over a number of years typically. When we have a child with a global developmental delay, which means they're delayed in pretty much all areas, we have to teach skills one at a time, and we have to teach them repetitively in order for them to catch on. And the reason for this is because children with delays do not learn very well from their environment. We're going to talk about two babies. One baby is a typically developing baby. She has no sensory issues, she has no medical issues, she isn't especially sensitive to her environment, overly sensitive. She's a happy little pudgy baby. When mom comes nearby, she grins and she coos and she smiles and she's happy to see mom's huge face right in her face. Baby number two is a little bit resistant to loud noises, faces too close, certain kinds of touch. And when the adults in her life zoom in and their faces are huge and their voices are loud and their touch is a little bit rough, she backs off and she looks away and she tunes out a little bit. There is some research suggesting that this baby who tunes out and backs away is likely to go on to develop delays because she's not engaging with her environment in the same way that baby number one in my example is. If we can step in at an appropriate time and approach baby number two with a calmer voice, with less motion, with fewer facial expressions, and maybe from a little bit more of a distance, it's possible that this baby might tune in more to her environment, that she might be able to learn earlier from her environment. You can see that tuning out very early on means that you're going to be delayed in lots of different areas. One of the reasons why kids typically tune out is because they have a lot of sensory issues. We need to fix those things. We need to work on those things. I have tons of videos in my sensory playlist, and I'll put links to some of those in the info box down below. Make sure that you are addressing those if you believe your child has sensory needs. Get an occupational therapist who's a specialist in sensory integration and sensory processing, and work with that person to help your child. Once we get that working, we need to figure out what the next skill in line is that needs to be addressed. Usually it is requesting, because that is the most motivating for the child, and that is the one thing that's going to make the most difference for any particular person, is to be able to say what you want when you want it, and then hopefully to be able to get it, or at least get a reason why you can't have it. And that is usually the number one skill that I work on teaching when I'm starting with the child who's nonverbal and who has a lot of needs. We constantly have to be adjusting. Just because we get the sensory issue fixed doesn't mean that our child is able to learn from his environment yet, because he still is surrounded by a stew of language that isn't meaningful to him yet. We have to help him make sense of that stew and filter out the chunks that aren't meaningful so he can focus on the pieces that are meaningful. This takes a long time. I worked with a little girl. She's my very favorite client. I don't even want to call her a client because she became a family member to me. She started out in a preschool I worked in when she had just turned 3, I think. I worked with her throughout her childhood, first in that preschool and then in her home twice a week for a number of years. And I think I may have kept working with her until she was in her teens. Now she is 17, just so you know, which is incredible to me. She was completely nonverbal and non-interactive and unengaged with the world when I first met her. She was the kind of child who didn't want anyone to touch her. She wouldn't look at you, and you couldn't really look too much at her either. At playtime outside, she would just run around the fence over and over, just ran around the fence. She didn't want anything to do with any other children or any adults. She didn't follow any sort of classroom routine. We worked really hard with her. And then I went to her home and worked hard with her there too. For the longest time, she was completely nonverbal. And then she started producing words a little bit at a time. And because I was so young in my career when I started working with her, I was not sure if the strategies that I was using were going to work. And so when they started to show fruit, I was really excited. I had done a lot of research, I'd been to a lot of continuing education trainings, and I'd worked with a lot of really good therapists after my graduate program. And I was convinced on a logical level that the strategies I was using were meaningful and were going to show benefit. But until it started happening, I wasn't quite sure on an emotional level. When she started talking, I was thrilled. And every word she said was something that I had taught her. Every single word she used either came from me or her grandma, but mostly me, because I was the one who taught at the time in the way that she needed to learn, which was very, very simple language. Her grandma used these huge paragraphs and long sentences, which, like I mentioned, are very much like thick verbal stew for our students, and they aren't meaningful because there's just too much information. They can't filter. Very short sentences, one word at a time, 2 words at a time, with visuals, with motions, with very engaging facial activities. That was what worked really well for her. So for years, the only words, the only language she used were things that I specifically had taught her on purpose. And then one day, I don't remember which day this was or what the words were, but she said something I did not teach her. And it was a huge moment because that meant that she was starting to filter the verbal stew around her and pick out meaningful bits and use them in her own communication efforts. And that is a huge deal. That is what we're looking for. Now I have to tell you, this girl, although she still clearly has an autism diagnosis and she does not communicate typically, she is verbal, she's engaged, she enjoys the world, she makes friends, she has a great relationship with her family. She's really a delightful girl. And she has her own YouTube channel, which is adorable. She posts a lot of videos of the rain. And the other day she posted a video of some cute boys in the yard outside of her house playing baseball. And she wrote in the description that she thought they were even better than the Diamondbacks. I think that's so cute. Anyway, I obviously have special feelings for this girl, and that video just really warmed my heart because she is having a great life, and without the skills that she's been able to learn in the intervening years, her life would have been a lot smaller and more closed in and less fun for her, as well as for all of those of us who love her. That's what we want to happen with your children too. We want them to get to the point where they're able to learn from their environment. We want to diminish the sensory distractions that they have by providing a sensory diet of experiences that help them regulate themselves and stay calm. We want to use short phrases, 1 or 2 words at a time, to help them understand language 1 word at a time. We want to use as many visuals as possible. I have lots of videos on that as well on the same YouTube channel. We want to use visuals when giving directions. We want to use visuals when we are giving options. We want to use visuals when teaching kids to do a sequence of events. We want to use visuals all the time in every situation. There's a super great book on this topic, and it's called Visual Strategies for Improving Communication by Linda Hodgson. There's a link to it down below, and I'm also going to put a picture of it right here so you can see it. It is the best book on this topic that has ever been written, and I highly recommend it for learning how to support your kids' natural language and communication development. This process is really slow, and it feels like the child will never get to the point where he's able to look at other kids playing and join in, or listen to adults talking and imitate some of that language. And I can't promise you that that will happen. I can't promise you that your child will get to any certain level of development. But what I can tell you is that every skill you teach is a step towards increased independence, increased joy in living, increased interaction, increased engagement with the world. All of these things are making your child's life better. Even if your child doesn't look typical at any particular age, every skill that you teach, every skill that your child is eventually able to learn from his environment is going to be a benefit. It's going to serve your child and make his life much better than if you hadn't stuck with it. My hope, of course, and I'm sure yours as well, is that all children will be able to learn from their environments without a lot of trouble. And by teaching skills really early on and very purposefully, by being intentional, by being consistent, that gives our children the best shot at that eventually. Please leave questions that you might have down below and keep watching because I put a new video out every week. All of those videos will give you more information about how you can help your child get to the point where he or she can learn from the environment in ways that are fun. I'll see you in my next video. Have a great day. Bye.